There he is.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Good evening to you, Brian.
Great to see you. Good morning over there, Andy. How is everything?
Yeah, not bad. Uh it's going well. I mean, the market's been a bit down, so I'll just quickly do the intro and let's jump right into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. All right. So hey, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Today is Thursday, February the 20th, by the time you watch this. And so the market's been a little bit choppy lately. Bitcoin went up to 109,000, I think, and then now it's dropped back down to 96, 95, 96, 97. So what's happening? Is the bull run over, Brian?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? I think everyone has different definitions when it comes to bull runs. Some people say if it's not going up a little bit every week, that must mean we're no longer in a bull cycle. Others look at it from a much more long term perspective and kind of interpret it on like a quarterly um, type of time frame. So, technically, we literally 1 month ago today, January 19th, at least in my time zone, that was the day of the 109K, 109.2K all time high. And here we are, just about or exactly 30 days, 31 days later, and we're
Mhm.
seeing, something like a 15% retrace. It's caused quite a bit of polarizing opinions. A lot of people are just being patient. I'd argue a lot more people are uh, growingly impatient right now and saying that it's time to bail while you can. So, as we've talked about on many of our previous shows, we're rooting for the majority of the crowd to really start to get bearish here and run for the hills because that tends to be the point in which we see sharks and whales uh, grabbing their coins that they're dropping, the retails coins, and then pumping up prices and punishing all of those panic fudders out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Having observing the market, it's interesting to watch. I mean, the trend, coming down a little bit, but there is one coin that seems to be bucking the trend. Litecoin. I think it started at a market cap of 21 or 20, from what I saw, and it's been slowly creeping up. I think before I went to bed, it was 12. Now it might have or 13. Yeah, it was around 12 or 13, and I think it's at the yeah that's where its market cap's been from a market cap of at 20, ranked at number 22 on coin
Yeah,
market.
it's currently sitting at rank 13. I could share my screen so we can have a little visual here. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, it looks like based on the chart, so we've got up here the market cap is back over 10 billion. I know it was I think closer to 8 when it was really sinking down here at the beginning of the month. And here we are
Yep.
2 weeks later, from
Yep.
February 2nd to be precise until now. Its price is up about 39%,
Yeah.
51% if you really talk precisely from that low point on the second. So yeah, it's grown pretty significantly and is testing its 6 month high here that it saw back on December 5th. So yeah, based on the fact that it's jumped from around the late teens to around the number 20 market cap rank, and now it's at number 13. It's fair to say that Litecoin has been one of the most impressive coins here in 2025 so far.
It has, and it's been really quiet about it. Not too much news about it on social media either.
It rarely gets hype compared to, the XRPs and Ethereums
Uh,
and chain links out there. Cardano's another big one, but yeah, Litecoin's kind of the OG coin that isn't Bitcoin and tends to kind of fade into the background unless it's having something absolutely enormous happening, which I wouldn't call this enormous enough to get much attention.
no, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah. So, shall we dive into some of the metrics on sentiment to check out what's happening with Bitcoin, with to see what's going on.
Yeah, I'd love to. There's definitely been quite a bit of frustration that we've seen from the crowd. From an on-chain perspective, slumping transaction volume is no surprise when we've been in this ranging period for some period of time now. And the same goes for active addresses and circulation. There's not really much to say other than the fact that the network has definitely cooled off a bit. And you might think that's probably bearish. From a long term perspective, it is. You definitely want to see utility rising over time, but we'll have 1 to 3 month lulls like this all the time and have prices not really be impacted at all. Now, if we're down here with lower active addresses and circulation in 6 months, then we start to get concerned. But usually, the utility kind of rises as the FOMOers jump in on a big rise like we saw in November and parts of December as well. So we're
Mhm.
kind of waiting for that to pick up. What is encouraging is the fact that the average trading returns remain low. So any wallet that's been active in the past 30 days has been in the negative territory for about 2 weeks, give or take. And this is an encouraging sign that, if you were to add on to your position now, open a new position in Bitcoin, you'd be doing so with less risk than the average point in the history of Bitcoin's fluctuations. Doesn't mean we can't fall further. This isn't an extreme level of pain that the average trader is in yet, but it's creeping down there. And especially if we start to see this blue line get below 0%, which represents the 365-day average trading returns, that's when we're really in business, like we saw back here in September 2024, right as the bull rally was kicking off. Um, because when both short and long term traders are in pain together, that's kind of the signal that the stars are aligning, and you can buy in with very little risk compared to normal because you're competing against traders that are already down significant amounts of money rather than up significant amounts of money like we saw in November.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then we got, funding rate that looks pretty neutral right now. Nothing too special here. Whale transactions are down. Again, that doesn't mean whales are bearish. We'll get to what the whales are doing in just a moment. It just means the whales are a little less active than usual, and they're kind of waiting for a big swing in either direction that's probably going to be caused by retail traders and maybe some reaction to, the next thing Trump does, or we had the recent CPI inflation news that was a little bit concerning. um, but once, traders maybe push prices back below 90K, if that happens, or above, something like 100K, get ready for whales to start to pounce and a bunch of $1 million plus transactions to really hit the network and cause the trend that the whales want to occur. But right now, they're kind of sitting idly by, waiting for the opportunity to either buy on the cheap or maybe even sell on the expensive if retails push it up that way.
Nice.
And moving over here, this is essentially one of our daily charts that we're always keeping tabs on. And right now it's looking pretty good still. So for those who are thinking whales are selling, this is contradicting that. Any wallet that has 10 or more BTC in them, they are collectively at their highest point. If we go back way in time to 2017-ish, even earlier, we'll say literally 13 years ago. Yeah, I mean, there's never, I actually thought there was a point where the 10 plus BTC wallets held more, but you can see it's off the axis here. I'll make it a little bigger so this doesn't look so sloppy. So this is the 10 plus BTC wallets. And if I get
Wow.
rid of the axis constraints, you can see just how far they have risen. And believe me, it was much easier to have a lot of 10 plus BTC wallets when the price of Bitcoin was, under $100. So the fact that we see more 10 plus BTC wallets now than we've ever seen, despite prices relatively being higher than we've ever seen. I know it's down 15% from the all-time high, but you get the idea. That's a pretty good sign that key stakeholders, institutionals out there, Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, BlackRock, Grayscale, like all of these huge institutions are hanging on to their Bitcoin and arguably collecting more and more. I know MicroStrategy slash Strategy, what they're known as now, they've been very public and transparent about anytime they're adding on. So we know they're continuing to do so. But even many of those secret whales and sharks out there that are more anonymous, they're clearly adding on as well because 16.35 million Bitcoin are collectively held by wallets with 10 or more BTC. And there's only a little over 50 million, something like 52 to 54 million total Bitcoin right now. So they're holding a substantial amount of those.
Wow.
I want to check
Yeah.
on that actually. We can easily check just by going to if we go to just highlight every single one of these, all zero all the way to infinity, we can see how many total Bitcoin are currently in circulation. Oh yeah, I had it way wrong. My mistake. 19.82. I think I was thinking of total addresses. My bad. But
Oh,
you
yeah.
get the idea. I mean, they're holding a gigantic percentage of the total supply very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a pretty cool visual to see there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, I think the idea that we're kind of coming to is whales and sharks aren't going anywhere. I mean, they're just continuing to hoard and find little opportunities here and there to just tack on more wherever they can. And as long as that's the case, the price can only collapse so far. And obviously, this applies to the rest of crypto, which are relying on Bitcoin to stay afloat.
Hmm.
Um, we just have not seen many points in history where whales and sharks continue to accumulate and then suddenly the price collapses. It's not unheard of, but it would be a very rare event.
Yep. Yep. I mean, if you think about it, that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and in terms of the number of Bitcoins that have been released into the system, it's what was it, 19.82 million
Mhm.
that's in circulation right now, and it's going to take another 117 years or something like that for the rest of the 21 million to be released into the system.
Right.
And as Brian shared in the graph, that most of it's being held by whales and sharks. Yeah,
As has been the
yeah,
case for a while, but they're holding the highest proportion of it that we've really seen, I believe, in the course of history. If we just go by percentage of supply held, we confirm that. Yeah, I mean, they're holding 82.5% of the entire supply.
yeah.
So gives you an idea.
And yeah, and what's interesting, and I guess what a lot of retail investors don't know is that it doesn't take much when there's such little supply. I mean, with the assumption that the whales are actually just holding on long term, like in the case of Michael Saylor and Strategy, and some of the other larger players, if they don't move and the market's going flat, it just means that you know. Because retailers aren't gonna move the the price too much unless there's huge amount of retailers coming in. But but yeah, it's interesting to see this.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see supply and exchanges continuing to stay low too. That's what this bright green line is showing. So on top of, what whales are doing, the fact of the matter is whether it's them or retail traders, they're quite content holding most of these coins off of exchanges right now. So that does de-risk the likelihood of a future sell-off. And I like the look of that. I also like the look of the fact that exchange addresses, especially the top 10, which we're visualizing here in for Tether and here for USD coin. Especially for Tether, they're staying quite high. So tons of dry powder is just sitting on exchanges waiting to be used if we start to see a collapse.
Mhm.
More so Tether than USD coin, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, from a sentiment side, I wanted to take a look and see just from a pure data perspective how positive or how negative the crowd is starting to lean. And for the most part, they've had a few bouts of pretty big negativity
Mm,
throughout February as prices were really starting to drop. You can see here at this local bottom, we got almost even amounts of positive and negative comments. And that's rare because the social media is always going to sort of swing by it, slightly bullish. And the people that are bearish tend to just not comment as much. So that's why we always see a little bit more positivity than negativity. But here it's pretty clear there's been some negativity going on, and it's risen a little bit in the past few days. We could smooth this out a little and just look at it on a weekly basis. That's going to ignore this spike because this is just off of like 2 hours of data on the current day. But
mhm.
if I just back out to a full year and look at it week by week, you can see how much more positive traders were in August, September, October, right up until Trump got elected. And then you can actually see as the prices rose, they were starting to take a lot of profit, the retail traders. And then
Mm,
finally, after this collapse happened the following week, that's when we're at the most negative because everyone's like, yep, we're going all the way back down to 60 or 50K. Get ready for the big crash. And then the big crash never happened. And instead, we kind of ranged in the 90Ks, dipped back up or jumped back up to an eventual new all time high. People got a little more positive right at that all time high before getting their hearts broken again. And we've stayed in a slightly negative range ever since, with like the middle point, the past year or so being about right there. So anything below this line is kind of a slightly negative week for traders. And we've seen slight negativity for about 4 weeks straight now.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I'd also love to just touch on ETFs really quick. I don't know if you've been watching them at all, Andy, but in terms of volume, we had this big spike right after Trump got elected, tons and tons of movement, and then it's just gradually started to drop back down. Still a little higher than we saw throughout like the summer and fall, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely declining pretty rapidly. That doesn't mean that people are taking their money out. The inflows and outflows have looked pretty even, but for the most part, the ETF volume is starting to calm down, kind of reflecting what we're seeing on chain from the whales, just less overall movement as Bitcoin's kind of taken this period of hibernation.
Um, so, Brian, just a clarification on this the ETF. So, what we're seeing here in this graph, that is the amount of volume in and out. Is that what
Just
this
straight
represents?
up, yeah, dollars being traded on a daily basis,
Okay.
specifically among the top 7 ETFs.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
This is cool. I didn't know that this was available. This data was available. This is cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
it's an awesome little resource whenever you want to check in on the ETF volume, and you can also check individual like volume here, and we have a few inflow and outflow charts where you can see if there's a big day of outflows or something to worry about. Like we saw,
Yeah.
for example, on the 10th, there was this huge outflow in the HODL ETF. So little tidbits like that can be very helpful if you are closely monitoring the ETF action.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
And then moving on to kind of a general overview of, you know, altcoins and the different cryptocurrencies being discussed, we can see Bitcoin is actually the number 4 trending token. So there is increased amounts of interest toward crypto's top asset as
Mhm.
people look toward the coin that's going to lead the way. But you can see Libra at number 5 obviously had a huge controversy at the beginning of the week
Mhm.
with the Argentina government and the president Javier Milei being heavily involved in a scandal. Um, do you have any? Have you been following this story a little bit yourself, Andy?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it made headlines. Was it a few days ago?
Hmm.
And I know it involved. Was it that there was someone from the KIP protocol, and it was anyway. It definitely impacted the Solana kind of ecosystem, if you could put it that way. Because I think, I mean, Libra was on Solana, and I think we saw Solana dip quite a bit, and I think somehow Jupiter was also dipping as a result
Yeah,
from this
Solana is
controversy.
absolutely, and Solana obviously with its association, it's the number one trending coin right now, and a lot has been discussed about it, especially in relation to its price and the underwhelming support that it's having right now between a little bit of unreliable network behavior combined with
Mhm.
the meme coin scene really having an extreme amount of distrust at the moment, which
Yeah,
of course is mostly due to price performances being quite poor for speculative assets right now.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. I see Litecoin's at number two.
Right below it, yeah, Litecoin trending due to its frequent mention in discussions about trading competitions and market movements. There's a trading competition for it on crypto.com, which I didn't even know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You can
Oh,
trade
cool.
various pairs, including Litecoin. So I don't think it's exclusive to Litecoin, but considering its price has been on a really nice ascension during an otherwise flat period for the market, it's not surprising at all to see it getting increased attention.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is
Elon
cool.
Musk's Grok token, the AI based meme coin, is seeing a lot of interest at the moment as well.
Wow, I didn't
Libra,
know. I didn't
is,
know there was a Grok token.
oh
There's a
yeah,
token for everything now.
if Elon's at the head, I would be shocked if there wasn't a token related to any of his initiatives. So,
That's
but yeah, we've
cool.
got Aptos, Tethers in the news. Interestingly, curious what they're saying about it. Users are expressing concerns regarding Tether's stability and its implications for the financial system. Always one of the most prominent signals for the crowd beginning to turn bearish is when they start questioning stable coins and their validity, and increasing their discussions about scams and rug pulls and all these negative topics. So um, this is a regular occurrence anytime we really see a downturn. It's very interesting.
Mm, yeah.
But yeah, anything else that might be on your mind and you'd like to do a quick dive on before we conclude?
I think no, I think we've been quite thorough. If I don't know, we've got like maybe 3 minutes left. Do we want to just quickly look at some metrics on Litecoin? Because just because it's been bucking the trend, whilst all the other coins have been coming down.
Yeah, sure. So switching over to Litecoin here, we do see the transaction volume has been pretty consistently on the rise. Going back really all year long, you can see if we just drew we'll call it a little 30-day moving average. This red line is taking the average of all these individual transaction volume days. So back 1 year ago, it was seeing $1.34 billion in transaction volume versus where it's at now of 8.8 billion. So we're talking about
Wow.
literally something like a 6x rise. Yeah, about 694% rise in transaction volume on a daily basis,
Wow.
556% increase if you just smooth out the averages, but that's massive. So clearly the utility is on the upswing in terms of transaction volume. A little more neutral when it comes to address activity, but it has been rising since September. Circulation is definitely rising as well. So these are all great signs for the long-term viability of Litecoin. Um, I would be a little concerned about the fact that traders have
Mm,
really profited significantly already. So,
mm,
if you feel strongly about just letting it ride and holding for the long term, no biggie. If you're more of a swing trader and you're trying to find precise moments to sell versus buy, Maybe there's an argument for a very short-term retrace because of its overperformance compared to the rest of the markets.
Hmm.
Um, but this is basically just showing how the average returns are doing, indicating plus 16% on average for 30-day traders and plus 40% on average for 365-day traders. Whales are pretty normal. Curious if there's anything going on with key stakeholders. So we can look at maybe the 100,000, the 10,000 to 100,000 uh,
Mm.
tier is on a huge rise over the last couple months. They've
Wow.
accumulated about 8.8% more coins in the last little over 2 months, called 10 weeks. Um, this one too, million to 10 million. So these might be starting to veer into exchange wallets because these are like literally worth $100 million or more. So maybe a little deceptive here, but I'd call this yellow line and maybe this red line. These are the two key stakeholder tiers where there's a lot of active sharks and wallets and whales, excuse me, and they're both moving in a pretty strong upward direction right now, which I like to see.
Interesting. Interesting.
So it's more of like a justifier that this pump has been real for Litecoin because it's being backed by an increase in holding and accumulating by the key stakeholders behind the second oldest coin in crypto.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it might be due to also the fact that a few submissions to the SEC for the
Right.
Litecoin ETF. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that at the beginning, but yes, this is definitely kind of a news related uh, pump as well because there's optimism over Litecoin getting its first approval of an ETF. We can search for how frequently that's been coming up on social media really quick. If I just type in Litecoin or LTC and ETF, we'll even say ETF or SEC. So it's been coming in waves, not really as
Mm,
big of a spike as you would think, but it seems like once a month there's an update on it or there's a little extra discussion. Um, Before Trump, that was actually when we saw the biggest spike, and it's
mhm.
kind of dropped down a little bit ever since. I'm curious if it looks different if I take out the word SEC. Whoops, take out the word or too. Yeah, about the exact same. So clearly there's some discussion about it. And
Yep.
actually, I mean, the last 3 times it's come right near a top, so I'd be a little bit concerned that this is a FOMO signal and a possibility of us, seeing a top as a result of people just pouring in money based on speculation related to
Yep.
an ETF that hasn't even been approved yet.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, I think we're there. I think it's been a great discussion today, Brian, and it's been great to see you. Good to hear from you because we skipped last month, and that was during the fires in LA. Uh,
Yeah.
Glad to see and hear that you and your family are doing well and okay. Um, yeah,
Yep.
and yeah. So thank you. Let's looking forward to catch up with you again.
Likewise, and I appreciate the flexibility for those watching. Andy was very helpful in doing kind of a quicker, spontaneous video due to my evening schedule getting shaken up a bit tonight. So you guys are all watching
You
pre-recorded anyways, but Andy here deserves some applause for his flexibility.
Well, and thank you for waiting because I literally got out of bed and I got ready. So
I figured it
thanks
was
for
early
waiting.
for you, so trust me, I understand. And again, it's much appreciated.
No, it's all good. That's all good. All right. Well, have a great evening, Brian. And
You as well.
yeah, and those tuning in. I hope you've gotten something good out of tonight's session or today's session. Have a great one, everyone.
Take care, guys.
All right. See ya. Bye.